welcome to a new entry of the High Tech Low Code podcast. On this episode, we'll be discussing low code with Mike Fitzmaurice and Tiago Neves. Mike is a low code evangelist and he's the VP of North America WebCon. Mike, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun, I think.
Hope so. Could you give us a bit of an introduction so that the audience could get to know you a little bit better?
I've been involved in low-code development, declarative development, rapid application development, call it what you will, for close to 30 years, both by professionals and by citizen developers. I've done it as a consultant. I've done it as an IT director. I've also done it while working for multiple companies involved in low code, including Microsoft. I was part of the team that created SharePoint and brought it to market, and I was responsible for developer relations for about the first 10 years of its life. Since then, I've worked for a couple of different workflow-centric, business process-centric low-code companies. For the last 3 years, that's been an outfit called WebCon. They're really good, clever people based out of Europe. And I spend a whole lot of time, not so much selling product, but absolutely selling ideas and letting people make their own decisions. The ideas I sell are about low code and how to do it well.
All right, that sounds interesting. I think we're going to have a really good conversation today then.
I'm going to try.
And Tiago, also, welcome back. How are you doing? What have you been up to?
Hi, nice to be here again, and looking forward also for this one. I share the same opinion as you, so looking very interested to hear from Mike and his background, which I think will be amazing for all of us hearing. So looking forward for this one, and I'll just let you drive, Mario, but I'll certainly probably have a question or two, as I'm certainly passionate about this topic as well.
All right, please do ask away. Before anything, I would really like to say thank you to both of you for joining us. Now, I know we have spoken about low code in the past, but today we do have the privilege of having the opportunity to dissect the topic with the spokesperson/evangelist. So, not wanting to waste this chance, I would like to kick off our conversation with the following question. Who do you think benefits the most from low code? Citizen developers, professionals?
Oh, gosh. That's a harder question to answer than you might think, because it depends on what you mean by benefit. All right, so I could see, look, I probably need to preface this by saying low code and citizen developers or citizen development are not the same thing. Most citizen development efforts I've seen involve low code, with some exceptions, scripting tools. I've seen a lot of people do PowerShell work, for example, in the world of Microsoft, as an example. They would call it scripting. In fact, they would go out of their way to avoid calling it code. I wouldn't. It's code. If you can make a spelling error and it breaks, then that's code. But it's just a question of how much is involved. But yeah, generally speaking, citizen developers live for low code. Now, it depends on who benefits. If you're talking, given the professionals have the option to code, you could argue that citizen developers wouldn't exist or would barely exist without low code. That's probably fine. But I care a whole lot more about outcomes than I do about supply side issues. And when it comes to who reaps business benefit or who reaps the best results from low code, that's professionals.
I see. Okay.
There's a lot more activity in low code on the part of citizen developers, but a lot of it breaks. A lot of it's fragile. A lot of it requires professionals to evolve it, sometimes heal it. But I don't want to be mean or pejorative, because a lot of citizen development work is actually pretty good and pretty interesting. But a lot of it tends to focus on what, I hate business buzzwords, but the long tail is not a horrible one in this case. In other words, we've got on one end of the spectrum, very high impact, very high budget, high time consuming development efforts for creating big mission critical projects. On the other end, you've got an ever shrinking tail of small applications that affect just a few people at a time. And if you add up all of the productivity to be gained from implementing all of those little applications, it does add up to quite a bit of value, or at least it has the potential to. And a lot of citizen development efforts have lived in that area. And if what was built worked, that would work rather nicely. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. So when you're looking at biggest benefit to the organization, this is counterintuitive and probably not going against the grain for compared to what a lot of thought leaders would like to say on this. But no, a lot of the time, the people best able to deal with low-code development are developers, because it's still development. And even if you don't have to code like a developer, you've got to think like one. And if you don't think like a developer, you will create things that are going to leave out assumptions. They're going to leave out exceptions. They're going to make assumptions that don't always hold true. Have you ever implemented, say, a simple automation or workflow scenario, for example? I don't care if it involves code or low code. And the client, the customer, the business stakeholder, whatever, the person who's not going to do the work, but the person who wants you to do it, tells you what's supposed to happen. And what they told you was only the best case scenario.
The so-called happy path.
Yes, exactly. The happy path. They give you the happy path. They don't think about, well, what if this happens? Or what if that happens? Or what if the other thing happens? Should I handle it this way or that way? In other words, your natural reaction, I'm willing to bet, is to come back at them with a whole bunch of questions that, if they aren't answered, will create a horrible application. And asking them these questions results in them being annoyed. Maybe. Depends. Some will actually thank you for having thought this through. And they might even say, oh, you actually get it. Well, what you really get is logic, not necessarily the process they have in mind, but that happens all the time. Citizen developers don't necessarily ask themselves these questions unless they really are developers at heart. The thing I will say about that is, if you really are a developer at heart and you just never did it professionally, and you start doing this, the odds are really good that within a year or two, you're going to change jobs and become a developer instead of somebody that does it on the side. And thanks, come on, join us. We have cake. I mean, it'll be fun. But yeah, low-code development is still development. And look, you and I could both grab a hunk of clay, but if you've got artistic talent and I don't, my sculpture is not going to be as good as yours. And yours will be the only one that is exhibited in a gallery. So even if there are 50 of me and one of you, you're the one that creates the most benefit to the world of art.
Good one. I like that comparison.
Yeah, and end of rant. Or at least
no rant. This is what we need. Tiago, anything you would like to add?
I'm someone that does certainly see what Mike is picturing for us, but because I'm somewhere in between. I come from a business background, but I've been in IT projects ever since I started my professional life, and so that was 20 years ago. And I've made that transition, really. So I've been a developer myself, and certainly see how I believe I fit into that citizen developer that actually has a developer mind. And I think I did that transition somewhere, I don't know when, through my career. And I think certainly this is what I would see myself doing, what you mentioned, Mike, which is how would come up with all these questions. I wouldn't be happy with what is just a use case, and all different questions would come up, and I would wonder, but what happens if so the user just inserts a wrong type of data here? So what's the next question, and what happens then, and this and that? And so that was always my way of looking at this. And I think certainly this is something that if you don't have that developer mindset of so questioning all these different paths that can happen, yeah, low code is certainly going to help you put the business logic in there. But if you don't have that developer mindset, you will certainly be facing with issues, bugs, use cases that you haven't thought about. And so all of that that we know happens. And that's why we have requirements, we have testing, and so its development goes a long way. And it's not just a question of having a form that works with one particular case.
Yeah, I found, well, yeah, there are a couple more things we could do along this line. I don't really want to spend too much time talking about things that citizen developers who don't have a developer mindset fail to do. Topic's been done to death, and I don't think we're going to argue with each other very much about that. But it's things like security. Like, how do you handle accessing data so that SQL injection errors or attacks don't take place? Or any of a number of things that are security related. There aren't so many holes in Word macros and Excel macros and so on that there used to be, but there are still options or things to fail to think about. Even if, how about this? A lot of projects with a lot of low-code tools assume by default that you're developing in production and that everybody has permissions to do everything. And it's the job of the citizen developer to think through, or the low-code developer, I should say, to think through how to take away privileges people shouldn't have. But it's a subtractive approach as opposed to an additive one, which means if you do nothing, anyone can do anything. That thinking through security carefully, that matters. And that actually has nothing to do with code. We come back to the developer mindset for that. In fact, one of our clients last year, what did he say about this? Development is only 10% of delivery. That other 90% involves change management, deployment, user education, IT education for maintenance purposes, security, auditing to prove things happen, metrics and monitoring, not the same thing, because that's like application health, system health, performance against metrics and so on and so forth. It's not auditing, it's something different, but it's related. It involves keeping track of what took place and presenting it the right way. There's a long list of things that have to be done. And again, somebody with either a developer mindset and some experience they've gained along the way, or someone who's been professionally trained, knows these things. A casual dabbler does not. So I circle back to the original question. The world has benefited more from low code when it's been used by people who know what they're doing, as opposed to people that are experimenting. Every once in a while, those experiments, however, produce really interesting results. I don't want to devalue that. And by the way, if you write an insecure, barely audited, happy path only automation scenario that scratches a very necessary itch only you and maybe your immediate colleagues feel, fine, who am I to tell you shouldn't do that? But the moment you start sharing that with other people, wackiness ensues.
Nice.
Just scope it right, minimize the risk, and we can all have a good time.
Okay, changing gears now. Is low code entirely completely on its own line, or can it learn things from the world of traditional coding, high code? And if so, what can they learn?
It has to learn things from the world of high code. If it doesn't, it's not going to be very effective. So we come back to two things here. Something I said, which was low code development is still development. And the second thing would be that development's only 10% of delivery. Things like agile, not agile like the religion some people make it out to be, but agile like the principle of team of people contributing specific strengths to an effort, very short release cycles, constant iteration, continuous improvement, that kind of concept, that can and probably should be applied to low code. Mike, WebCon is devoted to that concept. We're not the only one, but I'd like to think we're pretty good about it. But again, it's the idea that matters here. If you're going to release something, just because it's low code doesn't mean that it's a one and done. In fact, I know of a low code company that has in the past, they've since been acquired, but they used to do a brisk business, but they actually had a marketing campaign devoted around disposable applications.
Disposable applications?
Disposable applications, yeah. And I would argue that if an application's disposable, that means barely usable. If any application that's worth something is probably going to have an extended life of some sort.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just the time you spend developing it.
Yeah, and part of that mindset was, oh, okay, well, when we realize the application no longer does what we need because our requirements have changed, the world has moved on, our business conditions aren't the same, we'll just replace it with a whole new application. That seems incredibly wasteful and possibly something that would result in a loss of historical data. I don't want to see that. So yeah, there are all kinds of things going on in the world of professional development that low-code development really, really needs to keep track of. Change management matters. Staged deployment from a development environment to a test environment to a production environment. These are things developers just take for granted. It's second nature. You're not in the club if you don't follow these things because they're not even controversial anymore. It is scary the degree to which I would argue that the majority of citizen development efforts never consider those kinds of things. They kind of think of one and done, and they think of developing and deploying directly into production. And again, if this is like you and me working together in a small team and we're building a happy path thing, and it's just for us, fine. If we start sharing it with someone else, not so fine.
Problems are sure to appear.
Yeah, and patterns, like thinking through, try to explain a loop or a state machine or certain just parallel processing and making sure things sync up so that you know when it's safe to move forward from all the parallel paths, some kind of signaling going on. These are ideas, they're not code, but if you don't do this, it really, really limits what someone's allowed to do to basically a simple set of linear sequenced events, maybe passing data from step to step. And again, it's it limits what's possible, maybe not in a bad way, but for the love of God, we can't bet the business on one of those things.
That's actually a good point.
Yeah.
And what about you, Tiago? What do you think?
I was just thinking about how I see, maybe it's on next question, but how low code vendors, and so the low code concept in itself so comes from that application development beginning, but at the same time, so I think what we see nowadays is exactly what Mike is referring to, which is the concept of low code is moving away from just being then the development, and is now being taken to other parts of, in this case, the delivery, as well as even other technologies. But the question is still there, that we are just abstracting complexity, and that yet still at this stage, I don't see how someone just without that developer mindset, or at least some basic technical background, is capable to still deliver a robust, scalable application. And so all of those concepts that we know are behind a great delivery of either then something that can be small, like you were saying, if it's just to be shared between family and friends, it's not going to be anything critical for any business. Probably it's fine. But when we're talking about then critical business applications, it's all of these needs certainly to be taken care of. And I think that's where low code with citizen developers can go only thus far. And so you cannot have a complete delivery just with citizen developers. And I think there was a bit of more hype around citizen developers 2-3 years ago or so. I think that there's been at least some realization that it's good. I think that we have low code being a facilitator of the collaboration between business and IT. But that doesn't mean so just business can take over and do their own delivery, so take over IT. That I don't see that happening anytime soon, at least.
Yeah, in fact, let's be very clear here. I'm not anti-citizen development. I'm pro-citizen development with a fence around it. And what I am anti is people thinking low code equals citizen development. Low code is bigger than that. I love low code. In fact, I want professionals to use low code as much as possible, as long as they choose their low code tools carefully, because low code cannot be a washed down or a watered down version of real development. My whole goal in life, my company's whole goal in life, is for low code to be real professional development that just takes less time and produces more reliable, predictable results and gets more done in less time with better results. That's the goal of professional low code for adults, if you would. I think that matters a lot. And so, if you've got a low code system that only focuses on the development part, building the thing, you're probably looking at something that is watered down. If you've got low code that only thinks in terms of data, in other words, its development model is based around, I have a canvas that will manifest as a web page or a mobile app. I'm going to draw some controls, drop it onto the form. I'm going to bind that to some data, and then I'll add some reactive logic when somebody, clicks on something. That's a very limiting or limited application pattern. It's appropriate some of the time, but usually if you're editing data, you're doing it for a reason. So I really want to see the business process show up in the application model somehow, not just reactive activity. But, there are plenty of low-code platforms out there that think beyond, building something, and the thing that you're building in the first place is nothing more than a table editor. So yeah, it depends on the tools, but actually that's true of even high code or classic code environments. There's some IDEs that are great and some that are terrible. So yeah, choose your tools carefully, and low code is 100% professional. And again, you won't have all the freedom of full code, but you'll have a lot more productivity, meaning more output, faster output for the same amount of work, or same output with a whole lot less work, if you turn to low code and include that as part of a professional development shop's repertoire.
We kind of touched on the next question, so I'm going to jump over to the next one.
Oh, okay.
Because you just answered it. And I was like, okay, this is perfect. So I'll pick it up as a segue to the next one. And are the low-code platforms the silver bullet for many of the IT problems, or is just generating more entropy?
Ooh. Yeah, it depends a lot on the tool, but it has the potential to solve many IT problems. Never all of them. Come on, let's not kid ourselves. But there are really, citizen development is a useful reference right here, because two of the reasons why we tend to find citizen development attractive, by the way, both of them are completely legitimate. They really need to be attended to. Reason number one is the application backlog, the talent gap, the fact that there are, on my side of the Atlantic and yours, you're in Europe, right?
Yes.
Yes. Portugal, right?
No. Tiago is in the UK. I'm in Berlin.
Oh, okay, great. Sorry, my mistake. I saw Tiago and immediately thought Portuguese name, but
we're Portuguese.
Yes, Portuguese name, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. I'm in Canada, so basically we're covering a lot of places, and on both sides of the Atlantic, there's a gap of about 600,000 IT jobs. They're not going to get filled. There aren't people to fill them. We have a talent gap, we have a supply gap, therefore we have an application gap. And because of this, we need to find a way to get more stuff built with the resources we have. One option was citizen development. In other words, increase the number of people that can build applications by asking less of those applications, possibly, or using magic tools that meant that you didn't need as much skill in order to create those things. Now, that was sort of a desperate hope that pays off from time to time, but has much more modest results. But it's not without help. But I want to focus on the reason here. We need to get more done. We need to get more stuff built. Low code can absolutely, in the hands of professionals, can absolutely help with that. Almost everybody's low code platform in the hands of a professional can help them get more done in less time than if they were coding, unless what they've been asked to code is really, really weird, and hopefully weird and wonderful, but usually low-code tools take away some freedom and give you back productivity in exchange for it. And if they didn't take away too much and you still get to produce the kind of results you need, it's a very happy trade-off. It's the second reason for citizen development that's much, much harder. It's rare that low-code can help with this, but not non-existent. And that problem is the fact that mind melds only exist in Star Trek. There's no mind reading going on. That's just in the movies and sci-fi shows and books and so on. It's very hard for those of us that are trained to be technical software developers low code or high code or what have you, to be able to read the mind of a business person that has a problem that needs to be solved. It's also very, very hard for that person to describe what they need or what they want, or even the problem they have, in a way that you and I can act on to help them. Which means when we get involved in a project, it's not an explanation, it's a negotiation. And if all parties have a lot of goodwill, it doesn't get nasty, but sometimes it turns into an argument. And that's just crazy. But the appeal to citizen development is, if I'm a business person and I can build something for myself, I don't need to explain what I'm doing to anyone. That's a very attractive idea. Of course, the issue is, in explaining it to someone, even another business person, we might realize things we hadn't thought of until we said it out loud, or until a fresh pair of ears thought about it and asked a couple of questions that help to refine things nicely. It's good to have people communicate a little bit. You produce better results in some cases. So I think that low code can even help with that, but the low code has to focus on more than just construction. If it's, again, I'd say 80 to 90% of low code platforms out there are focused solely on construction. 10 to 20% of them think beyond that. Those are the ones you want to take a look at, because they might even help you communicate with users and business stakeholders and come up with a common set of design specifications, a common set of plans, even a common review process where people get together, look at what's being built, figure out how to improve it for the next iteration, and so on. There's a communication issue. Low code can help with that. Low code construction tools won't help with that, but low code platforms might. We're certainly trying to do that. Other people are trying to do that too. It's that will solve the other problem IT has, at least in terms of building things. I mean, will it help with solving their integration issues? Probably not. Integration is as much about politics as it is about protocols and priorities and so on. So IT is going to have plenty of problems to deal with, but we can get past just the application backlog and the communication gap with the right kinds of low code approaches. I don't think low code integration works nearly as well as some people claim it is. But yeah, those first two things, I think we can do that. I think we can do that.
All right. That's pretty good. Actually, I was just thinking of what you just said about the integrations and how hard they can be, and that they are more politics than anything else. It's so true.
It is. You know, here's a red flag for me when I look at a low code platform. It's not, if they say we've got hundreds of ready to use connectors, you can treat them like Lego bricks, snap them together and magic will happen. It's not that them having a lot of connectors is a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's a useful thing. But thinking, if that's one of the first things out of your mouth, it makes me think that you probably started in the wrong place and you prioritized the wrong stuff. Because if I want to create, again, a personal application to scratch a personal itch, a connector that talks to my contacts in Outlook, a connector that talks to my accounts in Salesforce, a connector that connects to a shared calendar, or if I'm gluing together 3 or 4 data sources that I work with on a regular basis, great. Yeah, you can do that with canned connectors coming from somebody's library. But here's the key here. You have 100% authority to touch that data. It's your data. The only thing you have to care about is your stuff. Now, if I curate our ERP system, and you curate our marketing automation platform, email campaigns, digital marketing, and so on. And you want to log activity or outcomes or something like that into my environment. Could even be lower stakes than ERP. It could be CRM or something like that. But still, I don't know you. Maybe company picnics or meetings here and there. You seem like a nice guy, but I don't know that you know how to work with Salesforce. I definitely know that you don't know how we in my team use Salesforce. We got to teach you a lot if we're going to let you open up our file cabinets and go through them, with a flashlight in your mouth and some gloves on. I don't like that. I don't like that idea very much at all. And again, it's not a question of bad faith. It's a question of there's more to this than somebody snapping together two Lego bricks. There are policies, there are procedures, there are permissions, there might be compliance concerns, there might be an audit trail that needs to be followed. Integration at the corporate level is hard, and it's not hard because people are jerks. It's hard because the world is more complicated than we often think about. So it actually does require us to do some negotiation. In fact, we might be better off if I write a small automation script or business process and make that available to you as you write an application that needs to talk to my CRM data. So you have a lead, you want to pump it directly into Salesforce. I love that. So I'm going to give you something that you can call as one REST method, and it'll use whatever scripting facility I want to use within my environment, or third-party facility that I want to use within my environment that puts the right things in the right places under the right conditions. You just call it Magic Black Box. That works out really, really well. No one's got that in their toolbox of 500 connectors. That's something you and I and we as an organization curate. We create it, we evolve it, we look out for it. It's part of what makes our organization special. So I think, and we negotiated it and created it together. And that is what integration at the enterprise level is like. If a low-code platform thinks that integration at the enterprise level is snap this to this and you're done, you're probably thinking of the wrong tools.
Or getting ready for a big headache ahead of him.
Yeah. But again, that is aimed at one person scratching one itch. And again, if that's all your application has to do, yeah, use that tool for that. For the love of God, don't use it for more than that. That's all I'm saying.
It has a purpose.
It has a purpose.
What about you, Tiago? What do you think?
I was just thinking about, so basically a question for Mike, but Mike, how do you think that the business might perceive then low code in the sense of, so it's not a silver bullet. So all these challenges that you're raising, they are still there. Can it be that business just might then give it too much value, thinking that it's going to solve everything?
It's going to help with a lot of things if it's done well. So at the very, very least, IT, and I'm using IT as an umbrella term now to mean all the technical people employed by the organization as opposed to all the business people. I don't necessarily mean the people who maintain the infrastructure or evolve the infrastructure. I'm also including developers. If we're talking to technical audiences, there are people that build solutions, build applications. There may be a business process team. They don't think of themselves as IT. For our little discussion right here, right now, for the next minute or two, they're IT. All right, so yes, low code is going to help IT be more responsive to business because, again, a lot of the stuff that slows them down, they don't have to deal with that. That's a good thing. Or they don't have to deal with it. It's done for them automatically in a systematized way, so everybody has to agree that it's okay for it to happen in that systematized way. but yeah, it's going to help them build more in less time and do a lot for them so they don't have to do everything by hand. It's like using power tools or labor-saving devices in the kitchen. It's going to help them get more stuff done in less time with more predictable, sufficient results. You're not going to create grand art with code, which can happen sometimes, but everything else, yeah, it's going to help. It's not going to solve, but it's going to help, and that might be enough. Here's the key. No, we're not going to win hearts and minds and the love of the business community as technical people if that's all we focus on. If we use the right kinds of low-code tools to improve our communication, our project management, and our transparency, our collaboration with business, yeah, there's still a lot we can do with low code to improve the total throughput of the organization. And the right kind of low code tools save us an incredible amount of time. I'll give you a perfect example. What if we are able to create a business process diagram that is understandable by business people, but the understandable business process diagram is the flow chart. With a lot of environments, you've got one diagram you're going to create to explain what it is you're going to do, and a different diagram you have to create to actually build the workflow logic. The latter one you can do automatically. In other words, I could sketch it out in somebody's workflow modeler, and then it will generate the application that we need. But the diagram that explains what we're doing, that happens by hand. There might not be a relationship between the two diagrams at all. What if they were one diagram? What if it were actionable and understandable at the same time? We can get a lot more done that way. What if you and I can sit down together and we can create the look and, in broad strokes, the behavior of the application you want me to build for you? In other words, we build an example of what you want. So I can see, I can try something, you can tell me where I'm wrong, and within about an hour's time, we can agree that this is what it should look like, this is what should happen when you click this button, and so on. We create, this could be a wireframe or something that looks a lot nicer than that. But yeah, if we look at low-code stuff that is not just about construction, but is also about collaboration and cooperation and communication, yeah, that's going to solve a lot of IT problems that haven't been touched in the past. Because IT is not known for being good at communication or good at providing communication or understanding communication. That's the organization's fault as a whole. That's not just IT, but at the same time, you know, we use the right low-code platforms, not just tools. We address more than just construction. We addressed collaboration. Long-winded way of saying you use the right tools, then the answer is yes.
Okay. Could low-code continuous focus on automation bring any sort of unwanted consequences? Could it become too focused?
I actually am very, very wary about automation because it is far too easy to beautifully automate a terrible process.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And the problem is, unless you live this stuff, it doesn't occur to you that automation and process and workflow are three different things. And again, I don't expect somebody that doesn't live this all the time to care about the difference between processes and automation. But you know, there are a number of wonderful tools out there from RPA vendors, robotic process automation vendors, you know, the UiPath, Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere. There are others, but those are the three rock solid dudes. They do good work, but they'd actually be the first to tell you that they're not in the business process modeling and automation business, but they're really automating our processes. They're automating activity, tasks. They should be RTA or RAA or something like that, as opposed to RPA, but they have the name they have. You really should combine that sort of thing with something that looks at the business process. What are the assets we need to get this done? What are the goals we have? What are the, how will we measure whether we accomplish it? What should be done? And then we defer to RPA or scripting or automation tools or any of a number of different things that, or even code, to actually execute the things that the process tells us it's time to do. Yeah, it's if all we focus on is automation, one of two things happen. We will slavishly try harder and harder to automate what might be bad processes, or what we'll have is working very hard to automate implicit processes. Maybe they're not bad, but they're in our heads. In other words, what to do gets automated. Why we're doing it gets lost if somebody leaves the organization, or it's manual and has to be read in order for you to understand which automation to kick off and what to do with the results when it's done. I have a problem with that. I think that looking at automation and only automation is a very incomplete picture. So yeah, think of the process and think of the data assets as well. But yeah, there's subject matter expertise that matters a lot. In the world of process management, it's thinking about the process first and then determining which assets you need and which automated bursts of activity should be created to support the process. Doing it backwards involves a lot of risk. The same kind of thing happens in the world of business intelligence. I can't tell you how often people have just said, okay, I've got this data, let's see what I can find from it, by doing ad hoc analysis after ad hoc analysis without really understanding the data that they're analyzing in the first place. They might draw crazy, they might occasionally come up with something no one had thought of, but more often than not, they'll draw crazy conclusions because they aren't grounded in the subject matter. It's really easy to focus on cool tools without thinking through why you're using them in the first place.
That is quite an interesting. I did like the example of the business intelligence. It kind of makes you think, we have a set of data, let's look for patterns. Okay, some patterns just happen because they happen. They don't have any meaning behind it.
Yep. Or yeah, okay. Well, it's 2020. It's the beginning of 2022. If someone's listening to this next year, hopefully the whole pandemic thing will be over.
Oh yes, hopefully.
But this happened more in 2020 than 2021. But there were countless armchair epidemiologists who had who were business intelligence people that just loved to be able to get at crunch numbers and say, actually what's happening is this, without understanding how viruses work or how, without knowing things that doctors know. It's not just about data. There is a certain sense of subject matter expertise that matters. Data analysis contributes a lot to human knowledge, but not without some knowledge to know what to do with the data in the first place. So sometimes wonderful things happen, but a lot of people, basically because particularly in the first year of the pandemic, when there were no vaccines, there were lots of lockdowns, what am I going to do? Well, this data is publicly available. Let's see what I can figure out. A lot of crazy inferences happened. That was more 2020 than last year, and certainly more than this year. But it's a big, obvious example. you gotta know what you're doing in order to handle the mechanical parts of it well.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. Tiago, anything you would like to add?
No, just love that example, Mike. That's all.
Okay, guys. On that last note, then we end today's podcast. Thank you very much, Mike and Tiago, for joining us. I did love your company. It was
Thank you.
amazing. Would also like to send a big thank you to everyone who is listening, and I hope you can join us on our next episode of High Tech Low Code Podcast, where we will always talk about more topics about the tech universe. See you soon. Bye, everyone.
Outstanding. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers. Bye-bye.